meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections? I'll look for a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the minutes from April 23rd board meeting, the April 30th workshop group, and the May 7th work group session. I think we could do this as a joint motion, unless there's some corrections.
Hearing that, I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Public comment period. Is there anybody that wishes to address it? Come forward and state your name and
Brian Van Gorp, Yucatan Township. I'd like to, there's two items really, but the first and more important one is that based on a conversation I had with Attorney Squires, the process that happened about a month ago where a whole bunch of conditions were dropped off of several permits was handled incorrectly and doesn't really exist. Aaron presented about a month ago that the 5-year renewal issue, which was actually conditions on these permits, would just be dropped. And that didn't seem right to me, because if he can just unilaterally make that decision, there's no safeguards for neighbors or community anymore. And so I asked Attorney Squires about this at the meeting about a couple weeks ago in Mankato, and he said the process has to be the same as it would be to add conditions, which would, I think, be that it has to go before the Planning Commission and then would have to be voted on by this board. There was no vote, there was no hearing, and therefore those conditions actually still exist. And the second thing, which is minor in importance, but a couple of years ago when we had that hearing on the Erickson violations, two of you and Mr. Squires stated that that would be addressed at the renewal in 2 years. Now, we knew there would be no accountability for him, there never has been, but I wonder if this is all part of some larger plan. But at any rate, those conditions still exist, and they will exist until a proper process has been performed.
thank you.
Are you here, which hat are you wearing today? Are you the Board of Adjustment?
No, I'm
or-
a citizen,
Oh,
and I think this is just improper governance.
but when you were talking to Squires, you were there as a county member of the Board of Adjustment, right?
Yes, well, I was at that meeting as a member of the Board of
So
Justice.
you were asking as a Board of Adjustment member then, or you were asking as whether a citizen?
I don't know that I distinguish between, I'm a person and I have a couple of hats, as you do.
Thank you.
Any thoughts on that?
We'll look into it.
We will look into it. We'll work with the zoning office on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address the board before we move on? Okay. We'll start with the consent agenda. There's quite a few points on it, and unless there's anybody requesting something to be taken off for further consideration, we'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda, or if there's any.
I move approval of consent agenda.
I'll second that motion.
Further discussion or questions or clarifications? There's quite a number of items on there that I know I checked out before the meeting just to see what was really going on. Being there's no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. So we have time to move on for some of the action items here. Number one, consider approving the conditional use permit for Tim Stencil, La Crescent Township. Do you want to address this, Aaron?
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
The Planning Commission has made a recommendation to approve a conditional use permit for a accessory building in a residential district. These fall under the CUP category when they are in excess of 1,500 square feet. The Planning Commission made findings in support of this application, and they also have recommended 5 conditions. Before I get into the conditions, I guess I would open it up to any questions on the project generally.
Bob, you were at.
I was not, I missed that one. I was there at the first one, but I was not at the second one.
So there was some concern about using the Ready bus line driveway?
The original proposal presumed access on a neighboring property. There was some confusion over easements. It was tabled when it came back. The new proposal indicates a new driveway being put in on the applicant's property.
You're familiar with where this is?
Yeah, I had heard about this a while ago.
It's right next to,
Right next to
Ready.
Ready Bus, you know,
On the driveway.
Ready.
On the left?
Yep.
Yes.
it's gonna be behind the house, correct?
Behind and to the west.
Just a side note, when we get these maps, it'd be nice to have the circle area where this building or whatever is gonna be proposed, you know what I'm saying? You know, we got a map here, like, of the property, but there's no designation where exactly the building is gonna go or whatever. It'd be nice to have a little, you know, at least just a mark or something, you know?
Sure. If you look on page 5 of your staff reports, there's a map on that, and it could be zoomed in a little bit more to clarity, but it's got shed labeled and a polygon drawn in.
Well, I know, I got that after but I mean on these new ones here, they cut that, upcoming public hearings.
Okay. If there are no additional questions regarding the application generally, I'll touch on the conditions the Planning Commission is recommending. 5 conditions. Number 1, the permittee shall comply with all federal, state, local laws and regulations. Number 2, the county may enter onto the premises at reasonable times and in a reasonable manner to ensure the permit holder is in compliance with the conditions and all other applicable statutes, rules, and ordinances. Number 3, roof runoff will be collected in a stormwater feature 4 feet by 46 feet located south of the building. All runoff from the 36-foot by 46-foot primary structure shall be directed into this feature. The structure will extend 3 feet below grade and be constructed to have slope sides so as to collect water at an east-west center line. Geotextile fabric shall be installed and rock shall be placed so as to create a finished grade slightly concave to the surroundings area. Details of the feature shall be provided with the application for a zoning permit, and the zoning staff shall inspect upon completion of construction. Alternatively, the applicant may choose to implement an alternative design prepared by a licensed engineer. Number 4, during construction until vegetation is established, a silt fence shall be installed on the south and west sides of disturbed areas. And number 5, The existing shed and concrete pad south of the house shall be removed prior to the construction of the proposed shed. I would open up to any questions on the conditions proposed.
Having missed that meeting, were they satisfied with the holding of the water pond arrangement as far as runoff by the neighboring property?
There was concerns about runoff from a neighboring property owner. This proposal, I don't know if it would fully have satisfied. I think the position was any additional drop makes the problem worse, but this didn't seem to be received as completely unreasonable either, and was viewed as appropriate by the planning commission. If there are no questions on the application or the conditions, I would suggest if a motion is made, it be to adopt the findings of the planning commission and include the conditions 1 through 5 recommended by the planning commission if someone was inclined to make a motion to approve.
We need a motion to that effect, to adopt the findings and grant the conditional use permit?
I'll make that a motion to grant the conditional use permit with the 5 conditions attached as enumerated by Mr. Locker.
Second.
Further discussion? I noticed that you had quite a bit of information in our board packet, and there was one area that was in red, like on page 3, where it says, wow, no new driveway connection to the public road is needed, no information on the driveway access to the building was provided. Vehicle access may require use of a neighboring property. That's the Ready Bus Line Road driveway?
You're on page 3 of I think, yeah.
The original application asked to use Ready Bus Line's driveway as a shared property. That was one of the issues.
Right.
He's building a new driveway on his property
Yep.
So it's
to
not an
access,
issue.
so it's not an issue. The only issue now is actually the runoff, which
Yeah.
is,
And that's been addressed with the conditions put on the CUP.
it's been addressed as far as, you know, like a 1-inch rain type scenario. You get a heavy rain,
You might have a little runoff.
there'll be runoff, but you're gonna have that any which way you look at it, on a
Right.
heavy situation.
The color coding of the text is for a condition where the staff analysis would require additional findings to be made by the board in order to satisfy in order to reach a point where you could grant. So initially, in that initial application, that text was read because that would not necessarily meet that requirement, so they would have had to have more discussion on that during the meeting.
Okay, sounds good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you, commissioners.
Aaron, did you want to comment on what
Did you-
Brian brought up, or?
I guess I'll just say that and I didn't catch it all, but I caught the end of it, and I can speculate as to what the substance of it is, but the policy that I wrote did not amend the condition. It simply stated the way that the zoning office proposes to administer that permit going forward. So we are not saying that we removed any conditions or amended in any way any conditions. We are just saying that in our administration of this permit, here's how we will handle that. I think I'll leave it at that today.
Right. Number 2, consider approving the low bid for CP, oh, these are all engineer ones. Do we want to move, aren't they? Maybe we should move ahead with our public hearing? Or do you want to
Yeah,
have the
it's
engineer?
9:45, so we can postpone the action items and come back to them?
We're gonna postpone the rest of the action items because I think Brian needs a little time to explain the next couple ones.
Yep.
So I need a motion to close this part and go into a public hearing.
I'll make a motion to recess the regular meeting of the Houston County Board in order to call a public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing.
Okay.
All right. I think Jeff is gonna open it with.
I can introduce quickly, yeah. So the public hearing today is to discuss and receive input to the potential exchange of land parcel 2109070002 for a portion of parcel 21109401, which our assessors looked at to find an appropriate chunk of the property. So in layman terms, what we're looking at is, and there's a couple diagrams floating around, but in layman's terms, what we're looking at is the mostly vacant portion of the trailer park that is adjacent to the current highway department building, and we're looking at a little over 3 acres of that parcel to acquire in total. The exchange is an equivalent value, a portion of that is an equivalent value to the what we own on the highway as a parking lot adjacent to our community services building out there, or at least attached to our community services building out there. The way the arrangement has been made is the rest of that portion of land that we want to acquire by the highway building, we would then make a purchase of for $70,000 in addition to the exchange of the 2 parcels. So, if anybody wants me to pull it up on a map and do that, I can. It'll just take a minute to plug in the computer, but I think the commissioners are all pretty familiar with what it looks like. So with that, open to public comment if anyone wishes to address it.
I would like to see the map.
Okay.
Give it my copy too.
We can't get it on the screen.
He's gonna get it
Oh,
on.
that's what he's doing. Okay. I thought he was bringing it down so they could.
He's got to plug it in.
I'll bring it up on the TV.
Okay.
Use all this high-tech stuff or something. Okay, so this is what it looks like from a survey perspective. I'll bring it up on an image as well. But this here would be the highway department area. This here would be Mr. Robish's property, and what we're looking at is this square, this rectangle, and this area here. And I'll bring it up on an image so you can see a little better what we're looking at. So those 2 parcels I overlaid are this bit of land right here and this roadway here. This would the roadway creates an extension of East-South Street through here to connect to our property, what would become our property, and to also allow this landowner here to maintain access to his facility. He has an easement there, so that easement would continue. And essentially, this line is drawn based on reaching that appropriate value of the properties. And then for reference, the parking lot area that we were looking to trade is this portion of land right here. which is adjacent to other property owned by those. Yes.
No. There's a church in the adjoining property.
In the adjoining, yeah.
It would actually be two separate land deals, right? They're not, it wouldn't be really technically a trade, would it?
It works out to two transactions. One is a trade of two parcels, and then the other is a purchase of the remainder of what we're looking to acquire.
So the three, which one is the trade?
So we're talking trade.
This trade is the large one.
The large
And the idea of that, the trade happens before the remainder area is purchased.
So that's the key one that ties in with them too.
Yeah, so, yeah, if the deal ends up falling through it, you have contiguous, so we have a contiguous property rather than.
So this actually extends the property to the west.
Correct.
Is there any other discussion you want to bring up? I think Jeff, our administrator, just explained what we're talking about. We're not actually we can't make a decision at a public hearing, of course, but we wanted the public to be aware of what we're talking about.
Well, is there, maybe, Bob, do you have any more information with parking lot?
Wait until we go back
Well,
to
That's-
the
I
discussion.
guess that's outside the public hearing.
You know, we'll wait for any more discussion till after the public hearing. Mr. Van Gorp, did you want to talk? No.
No.
Oh, I thought you raised your hand.
These are the kind of public hearings that I like.
I wasn't prepared for it. So at this point, if there's no other public comment, we could close the public hearing portion.
Make a motion to close the public hearing regarding this matter and reconvene the regular meeting of the Houston County Board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are now back into the regular board meeting. Where we can pursue comments from the board.
Are you going back to the maintenance rock and the action items, or do you want to take to this issue right away?
I would prefer to get this taken care of. But, yeah. let's
Continue on with the
Continue on
public-
with the,
after- yep.
following up the public hearing. Discussion on this actions.
I would recommend that we table any action with regard to this transaction until we determine if we can resolve the parking issue. The Meyer Building property, that parcel that we're trading is associated to, requires, based on city conditional use permit and dimensional measurements of the building, it requires 40 parking stalls. We can get, at best, 16 on the parcel that is called the Meyer property. So we need to come up with 24 stalls or get a variance from the city for 24 stalls, and that isn't going to happen. So we need to come up with 24 stalls. Mr. Rogish would sell us a small piece of property next to the trailer park that would accommodate 9 stalls. Maybe 10 if you squeak them, but let's call it 9. So if we got 16 and 9, we've got 23. We need to come up with 17 stalls. I've been discussing the issue with various property owners in the neighborhood. the parking stalls by ordinance are supposed to be within 800 feet of the facility. So you make an 800-foot circle and look. And I've got one property owner that might consider leasing us a 13-stall area that's already paved and in use that would facilitate us. We're not open on the weekends is when they need the parking the most, so we might possibly be able to lease that 13 space area. There's another property owner a little closer to the property. Oh, this parcel is about 500 feet away. There's another one a little bit closer that we might be able to lease. I have not been able to get a hold of the owner. The people that lease the property currently are not against it, but they lease from a property owner that I've not been able to get a hold of. But to say that, there would be a cost in acquiring the small parcel of property from Mr. Rogish and improving it to make it into a parking lot. There would be a lease expense for the long-term lease of those 13 stalls. So there would be some additional cost to this overall project should we go ahead with it. That's all I can report on the parking. I don't have it resolved, but until it is resolved, I don't think we can move forward with the transaction in the public hearing discussion. And just because I resolved the parking issue doesn't mean the county board is going to vote in favor. You know, that's a
Well, we
measure,
might
an
not be
item
able
to
to
be
do anything
seen.
with it. We wouldn't be able to do anything with the property if we don't resolve the parking issue.
That's correct.
So, we're, hard to make a decision to buy something when you might not be able to use it in the long run.
Right.
So any further discussion is basically not necessary at this point.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Not looking to put a bus line in, so we don't need the parking, are we?
No. I don't anticipate a bus.
This has gotten extremely complicated, and that's worrisome. Well, I have another thought on how to go forward with this, but we'll do that at another time, since,
Yeah, that's why I made the comment that I did, that
yeah,
I've got a couple of thoughts too, but hey.
okay.
Nobody wants to hear him today, or?
I would
Let's-
hope to have the parking issue answered by the next regular meeting. Whether we can do it or not,
One way or the other, yeah.
one way or the other.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Because the ordinance for the city does dictate that you cannot consider curbside parking as part of the stalls. It has to be on a parking lot situation.
Well, then we need to table till our next regular meeting
Yeah, thanks
and
for your
resolve
efforts.
the issues before we can make any decisions.
Okay.
Has there been a motion made to table?
Bob made it.
Bob
Okay.
made the motion. I didn't hear a second.
I'll second it then.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor of tabling this to the next regular meeting or to
No,
when the issue is
That's
resolved?
tabling action items 5 and 6.
5 and 6, yeah.
Both of them.
Okay.
One is a swap and one is a
Number
purchase.
5 and 6 are, will be tabled until the next regular meeting or the issue is resolved,
Correct.
whichever comes first. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, we'll move on with Brian and your,
Do you want to
oh, what? Oh,
do the closed session now and come back to the action items?
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock.
Well,
okay.
I
should
think we should do Brian and
I
all of
think
that
as
because
long as
otherwise
he's
they gotta
here.
leave and come back.
yeah, we gotta go with that, I think.
Okay, we're gonna move ahead with you,
Go-
Brian.
Go back,
and
go
make
back
an
to Brian,
approved
yeah.
version. We heard most of this at the committee meeting this morning.
Yeah.
Explained to us about it. Okay, first one is consider a low bid for CP 2019-05 maintenance rock contract.
So, morning, Commissioners. We the highway department try to do maintenance rock work every year. Some years we add maintenance rock to road surfaces, gravel road surfaces. Other years we do maintenance rock for shouldering of the road shoulders along the paved roads. This year we're back on to doing gravel surfacing. We took bids, and with how we set up the proposal this year is that the road surfacing bids are based on a per road basis. 2 roads are actually split up into 2 segments of those roadways. So we can take the low dollar item based on a roadway, not overall total by contractor. So when you look at the numbers, Milestone Materials was the low bid on 2 roadways, CASA 24 and CASA 32, and Bruning Rock Product was the low bid on the remainder of the roadways. Adding those numbers up together based on the quantities in the bid came up to $241,739.20 total for to award the low dollar amount per roadway. Those numbers are very good numbers from what we saw. When we look at our 2019 stockpile prices, those prices vary from $7 to $8.50 per ton for rock. These bids came in at between $7.16 to $9.21.9 per ton of rock, with the average being around $8.74 per ton. So we're essentially getting the rock from the quarry delivered out to the roadway for about $1.50 more than what we would if we got the rock in the quarry ourselves. Trucking wise, to truck that rock for $1.50 per ton from the quarry out to our roadway, it's more economical to have the contractor do that for us rather than us hauling it ourselves. So my recommendation, based on our budgeted item for maintenance rock, is to award the bid to the contractors, plus to overrun the quantities by 30% per roadway. It keeps us within budget for our rock item when you look at that independently of all the other highway department items. Plus I looked at our county budget for 2019, looking at where we are for all of our overruns and underruns throughout the year to date, knowing that we have had some unforeseen failure along one of our county roads that we're anticipating to be a pretty costly repair. Trying to incorporate that into our 2019 budget with a bunch of adjustments. I met with the county administrator. We will still be under our original 2019 budget by roughly $30,000 if we overspend the quote or the bid by 30%. We still have additional contingencies that number can increase to another $50,000 more that we would underspend our budget. So we have all this stuff still within our budget by overrunning these quotes. So
And you're figuring in County 21?
that is figuring County 21, yes.
Emergency
Yep.
fix?
Yeah. And we're trying to estimate on the high side of any potential costs that are unforeseen, kind of looking forward to. So I think that we're well within our budget by still overrunning this quantity.
I'm not aware of 21. Did we have a slide?
Yeah, so County 21 up by Store Valley Road at that intersection. Last summer there was some issues on Store Valley on the township portion of that roadway. They've had issues over time that section of the county has got more and more wet. Last fall we had maybe a couple hundred feet worth of slope failure where the slope adjacent to the roadway was starting to slough away. This spring, as we went through the spring thaw, that failure length grew to now it's probably it might be about 1,000 feet in length. So what we're going to do out there, we're going to excavate down near the toe of the slope, put in some larger rock, essentially build a keyway down in there, kind of try to break that slip failure plane and build it back up, cover it back up with topsoil, let it get reestablished with vegetation. Our initial estimate, we're looking at $72,000 for that work. I'm hoping that we can get that cost down to under $50,000. We're looking within the budget wise by moving numbers, figuring 72,000 would be the high end.
Is there a pipe in that driveway for Bob Johnson?
On the
It'd be-
south side of the
yeah.
roadway. I believe there's a culvert out there. I know there's a center line culvert that crosses the roadway just to the west of the slope failure.
Yeah.
We did some ditching work already with our staff,
Yeah, I
trying
saw
to get
that.
that water to drain out to hopefully dry out the subgrade below the road. It's a wet area. It's getting
Yeah.
more and more wet.
Extremely wet.
I was told by a township officer out there a week ago that just up the valley was farm field at one point where they were corn out there, and then it converted over to pasture because it was getting too wet, and now it's too wet to even walk across without sinking in, and it's all reverted to wetlands, so it's just getting more and more wet in that area. So when the roadway initially got built, they had some failure areas at that point that it was just wet back when it got built back in 1986, 87. So it's not the first time there's been some issues out in that area.
Back to the rock. Is this annual that we put this much rock on?
Yes, yes, annually the quantity varies depending on the type of work. When we do shouldering, it costs us more per ton to do some shouldering than what we're getting this year. We do annually try to do it in that similar budget amount.
So most of these are surfaced roads and we're just shouldering, or some of these
No,
other
they're all
rock?
gravel.
This is all gravel roads doing surfacing. So what this amounts to is essentially about 1 inch of rock along the entire length of the roadway. Some sections we're going to have it be a little bit heavier, some sections are going to be a little bit less.
But you're gonna try to cover all the gravel
But
roads
we're going
this
to try to
year.
cover all the gravel roads with that little bit of rock.
But the cost, these are not surfaceable roads? I mean, there's a hard surface because of issues with the road?
Some of them could be hard surfaced without having to do a whole lot of work to them. Other ones, we'd have to do major work in order to do some type of hard surface. Looking at the overall cost, the traffic volume, what the annual expenses on rock versus if we paved it and then had to maintain that pavement, mostly still is a little bit cheaper to spend the money on gravel versus paving it. There's a couple roadways that are really kind of getting borderline just because of the traffic volumes. So we can look at paving in the future.
I'm just curious with regard to just keep throwing rock at it and plowing it off and put more on and plow it off versus.
Yep. So when you look at studies based on what the studies at the state level and at the federal level said, to figure out a gravel roadway, you're adding 1 inch of rock per year just to maintain it.
Now, chip seal isn't something that we would do on these lighter volume roads just to surface them?
We do have a couple roadway sections that have been chip sealed that have held up fairly good in the county, but you need to have a really solid base. It's going to be dry year round. If you have any type of moisture in there, that chip seal just falls apart. So, out of these roadways, we maybe have one section of roadway that's dry enough to make that work.
So we're looking for a motion to approve maintenance rock contract with the low bid from Bruni?
Some of it is Bruni, some of it is Milestone Materials.
Yeah, 3 of them were Milestone.
2 of them.
2 of them, yeah.
Question first.
Just one question more on,
Okay.
the price here. I noticed, there one bid there of $716,
Yep.
and what was the reason for that low bid?
That is adjacent to 2 quarries on that roadway. The roadway is about 3 miles in total length. And the quarries are right in the middle of that roadway. So trucking is very minimal. They have rock that's actually going to be, I think the crusher's actually in that quarry right now making some rock for a different project. So the material's all there. It's pretty much just going to be ready to go right away. So
So the higher bids is further away from the quarries?
yeah, so the longer you get trucking from the quarries, the more it's going to go up. So that's also why we bid it based on by roadway instead of by contractor, because some contractors have quarries in some roads and they don't have in other roads. So this way, we know that the closer the quarry is to the roadway, the better price we're going to get.
About how many total roads are you talking about?
We have
15?
13 roadways, 15 segments.
Well, I think it just points out the importance to have our quarries and our counties spread out to,
Reduce trucking.
yep, reduce trucking and expense.
Brian, approximately how many miles of hard surface county road are there and how many miles of gravel county road? We've got somewhere around 250 total, don't we?
Yes, so we have just under 200 miles of paved, and then the remainder about 60 miles of gravel. I don't know the exact
Yeah.
mileage, but
Yeah. I'm not asking exact. I'm just curious, approximate.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
That said, I'll make a motion to approve the rock bids that we received as recommended by Engineer Pogozinski, with 2 of them going to Milestone and the remaining 13 going to Bruning Rock.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? All in favor?
is that
Aye.
Opposed?
is that with the 30% overrun in quantity?
You wanna add that?
I didn't include it.
So do
Got
we
a
need?
motion and a second, but it does not include the 30% over.
Okay, so we already approved that part, so do we, on a second motion to
I'll make
approve
a
the?
motion to do 30% overrun.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
There, covered.
Thank you.
Second item is resolution approving the airport maintenance and operation grant contract. This is a grant we've received before, I believe.
Yeah. Yep, so the maintenance, airport maintenance and operation grant, we do a grant, every 2 years, where, our maintenance operations, we can get reimbursement from the state of Minnesota for maintaining the airport. So runways, doing lighting, doing any type of maintenance out there. It also includes some costs for, telecommunications stuff for, the telephone lines. So for the 2019-2021 grant, which starts on July 1st of 2019, the total grant amount is not to exceed $56,960. So my recommendation is to approve this. It's besides for that a little minor change in the telephone reimbursement, which start to our benefit. There's basically no other changes within the agreement.
Move to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you.
Okay, action item number,
You to be in the office this afternoon?
I can be.
consider appointing Robert Conway to the Planning Commission to fill the vacant position with the term expiring December 30th. That's a short time.
So this is to fill,
Just to fill,
fulfill Bob's
Mr.
term,
okay.
correct?
Fill out
Yes.
the term that I left. Yeah.
Yep.
okay.
Big shoes to fill,
You might have bigger feet than I do.
I would move to approve the appointment of Robert Conway to the Planning Commission.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Now we need a motion to recess and go into a closed session.
I would move to recess the regular meeting and go into a closed session.
Second.
Can you tell us what that's about, closed session?
Attorney Yanto.
Copy of that, Commissioner, I asked you to go into closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D05, subdivision 3, parens B, and has to do with Aggie versus Houston County, file number 28 CV 18452.
We had a motion, we didn't have an action. All in favor of going into recess?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
For future hires and so forth, but never was available before. They're restructuring some things that should have been in place a long time ago, so that's a good thing. Hired a new financial director, the other one left after a number of years, but the replacement was from in-house, and she's been there for a number of years too, so she knows the operation and seems like a good replacement. I had a smart bicycle meeting, and I have some information that I'd like to get together with Bob about, because he's working on some.
So just a question for you, like on the SMART meetings, when do you find out that there's a meeting?
They email,
Okay.
and I can
So
share
if I'm
that.
not on the list, then
No, I'll share
I'd like
it in
to
the
go.
future. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But other than that, that's about it.
Just a question for you, Jack.
Yep.
As a biker yourself, have you been getting any feedback on the bump outs that are going in there? And it was brought up to me by, well, then the bikes are gonna have to swing out to go around there.
That are going in where for
The bump outs
specifically?
by the pool down there on the county road.
Yeah, I think the pedestrian crossing kind of trumps that. But I know they put a number of them on Cass Street in La Crosse, and it's just a joke, to be perfectly honest, because that's exactly what happens, and trying to plow them out, and I mean, there's a number of issues, but yeah, to have a bike all of a sudden swing out from somewhere like that is particularly dangerous, but, so.
I've heard about that one on Cass Street, many complaints about that.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Talked about it the other day.
I had a few interesting meetings. I went to the solid waste meeting with Julie last week, or 2 weeks ago, and it was one that we met with the haulers and all the counties that are involved with, on this Joint Powers Board, and it's really emphasizing that there's a lot less landfill going in and more recycling done. Well, a lot of the haulers were bringing up that there's no money in what they recycle right now, so they're kind of hurting, but they're not discontinuing it. But they really wanted to emphasize getting more education out there to people about what you can recycle, and trying to reach a lot of the school systems, a lot of the kids, so that they go home and say, this is what you can do. One of the big things the biggest problem is people put like bacon grease in a mayonnaise jar, well, then they can't recycle it. If it's clean, you really need clean recycling. And as far as the plastics, of course, they prefer 1 and 2. Harders actually has a machine that separates 1 and 2s from the other plastics, but the other plastics go to Excel then for their clean energy projects, it's BERT. So it's not really a loss, so you can still throw your plastic in there. I noticed La Crescent Township is now going to single stream recycling, where you can, one big container for all your recyclables and one for your garbage, which is what most municipalities do. That's going to be the best thing. So, and also the annual meeting is June 1st out at the landfill site, and it's, I think Fred went 1 year. I don't know if Jack made it or not, but it's very good. It starts at 8. They have a breakfast and then a short meeting, and then a tour if you want to go on tours of the landfill site to see all the good things that they've done with areas where the Boy Scouts can go camping out there, and there's hiking trails.
Hiking trails, yeah.
Yeah, it's really quite interesting.
That's the La Crosse County landfill.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good meeting. I
I'll
can't
make
make it this year.
31st Friday.
I've got a church thing in Rochester, so I've got to.
What time was that?
It starts at 8 with a breakfast, and the meeting itself starts at 8:30.
So, yeah, Friday, May 31st.
May 31st. It's Friday, May 31st.
Yeah.
I'm
Same.
coming home the 30th just for that.
Same problem.
So, then I had an EMS meeting, which is our 11 county joint board again, and Our director, Don Hauge, is gonna come in to our meeting sometime, hopefully in June, one of our regular meetings, just to give a report on what EMS does for counties. And it's most beneficial to rural counties, because we're all volunteer fire responders, first responders, et cetera, and they do all the training for it. So he is gonna come talk to us. And then I had a workforce development meeting up in Rochester, and that too had a lot of emphasis on farm-related, especially dairy farms that are having so much trouble. And they have gotten grants available, and they're working with our EDAs to do some more diversification, some education. If a farmer wants to get a part-time job in technology or something, there's grant money that is available now. So, but they're working with their EDAs.
Allison is working with that,
Yes.
with the workforce
Yes.
development here.
And they also have some really good programs going. They're 4-week programs. Like the first one was carpentry. You go in the first week, they kind of teach young people, high school kids, and up to age 25, men, women, whatever, to learn the trade. You know, first week they kind of teach them, work on time, having, good work ethics, how to do a resume, etc. Then the next few weeks, they actually work with carpentry unions for education, and some of it was really kind of amazing when these kids were listening to how much you could make if you really get certified in this and know what you're doing, compared to, just a job at McDonald's or something, really. And it's a 4-week course, all paid for by Workforce Development, but you have to make a commitment. They take 15, and you're really almost guaranteed a job when you get done. The last one was on cement. I don't know what all you do is cement, but they learn for 4 weeks what to do. So it covers each of the trades, basically, to get people involved in it. Great program. And I also gave all that to Allison, too, all the pamphlets on that. So, yeah, it was very interesting. So those were my 3 big meetings.
One thing that I forgot, I've got on my calendar just room 219, 1 o'clock today. Did I put something on the wrong date, or is there a
That's
meeting
your-
at 1 o'clock?
Yeah, we have the Comprehensive Land Use Plan Committee, Advisory Committee has a meeting
That's what
today,
it was.
1 o'clock.
Thank you. Oh, I do have to be there, don't I? All right.
Okay, is there anything else to come before the board?
Question with regard to some of these meetings that were brought up. I don't know who's going.
We can all go to these meetings. They're just information. We're not making motions or anything like that. It's like going to an AMC meeting, district meeting, which we have the next week anyway. So, but if you're looking for a ride, we should communicate.
I just want to make sure we're not
Nope. they're-
open meeting violation
Nope.
as far
Nope.
as showing up at some of these meetings. and how they
It's
are operating
informational
and
stuff.
fearful.
They're-
Informational stuff is
These
not-
are all informational
Yeah.
meetings.
We don't vote
Nope.
at those meetings. We
No.
don't.
Don't discuss any business.
And we don't discuss county business at them, so.
Kind of part of the reason for going to the meeting is there's
But you're just
information
learning.
regarding
Yeah,
county.
right.
If more than, if more than 2 of you are gonna go to one, we should it should be a notification that you'll be at that meeting. Because then it's a quorum, so.
We could actually just list these meetings when they happen, and
Yep.
then they're notified on this website. All right, is there anything else to come before the board?
I'll move adjournment.
Hold on.
Wait a
Closing
minute.
public.
Oh, wait a
I'm
minute.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you,
I
Brian.
I missed that too.
Yeah.
Is there
I wasn't
anybody
looking at
from
my
the public
sheet
who
anymore.
wishes to address the board?
I just wanted to expand on what I was talking about before a little bit. There seems to be some unclarity here. What Aaron seems to be advocating is just non-enforcement, and I hope that we don't go down that road again. That's been a 40-year problem in this county. I think we're all aware of that. And actually, at the time these permits were approved, there was no interim use that didn't exist. And really what you created was an interim use by saying it's going to be renewed every 5 years. So it seems to me that the appropriate thing to do here would be to change them into interim use permits, and why give up what was intended, which is regular review and control of these permits. And you know, you're giving up control over the permit by changing it the way Aaron is suggesting, and that was not obviously the intent when the permit was created, because the 5-year condition was put on there. And so I think, and I've talked to him about this, and I think what he is basically advocating is just a lack of enforcement of this condition, which is going to cause problems down the road and has caused problems in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Anybody else wish to address the board?
Oh, can we get an update on the comprehensive land use plan?
We're continuing with the advisory committee to develop the plan. We've at the same meeting you were at over land use discussions, we were able to sit down afterwards with another county who just developed theirs, and had a good discussion with them on their processes that they used, didn't use, what lessons they learned out of the process, and some of that will come out at our meeting with the advisory committee this afternoon. Still working towards it.
Now,
Yeah. Okay.
I move adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?